Welcome back. We've got breaking news this morning. China's foreign ministry claims that the U.S. violated international law after intercepting a China-bound oil tanker off of the Venezuelan coast. This comes just days after President Trump announced a full blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers traveling in and out of Venezuela. The U.S. reportedly pursuing a third sanctioned oil tanker as well on Sunday. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, your reaction?
Well, Merry Christmas. I think that the Trump administration is doing the right thing. For decades, the international community, through the Security Council of the UN and through other bodies, have imposed these sanctions on various bad actors, but has very rarely enforced them. You know, kudos to President Trump for saying, look, we're going to enforce the rules, because if you don't enforce the rules, what's the point of having them? So this is a significant turn, not only for Venezuela and the United States, but for the international community at large.
Yeah, I mean, look, China says the U.S. violated international law, but the Trump administration has been very clear about what it is doing around, in and out of Venezuela.
Yes, and what we're doing is we are going after tankers that have changed their names, that have done sailing under false flags, all sorts of bad acts. And of course, the oil is sanctioned in the first place. So this is important. We've got to remember fundamentally that Venezuela is a narco state. It has assaulted the United States in various ways. And President Trump is saying, look, we're just not going to put up with this. And this is really important for the international community to see President Trump exert political will to enforce aims that are not only great for America, but also great for the rest of the international community and world.
Yeah, so is China supporting Venezuela, or is this that China was there at a time that the U.S. is getting deeper and pushing back further against Venezuela?
China has consistently supported Venezuela, and we have seen this over the last several months with all of these rhetorical statements. China now believes that it can sort of divert the Trump administration by creating problems in Asia. But I don't think that that will be successful, because China knows ultimately that it cannot stop these seizures of tankers. It doesn't have the military power to do it. So China is going to bluster. But at the end of the day, the Trump administration is going to exert its will.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has launched a review of Nvidia's latest batch of advanced H200 AI chips. This could be the company's first shipment to China, which President Trump apparently is allowing, something President Trump said he would allow Nvidia to do. I spoke with the CEO of Nvidia, Jensen Huang, last month on competing in China, and he was all in on sending those chips there. Watch this.
I hope for Nvidia to be able to go back and compete in market in China. In the last 4 years, the administration really set us on a path that really backfired. The policies have really backfired. From a 95% market share in the China market, which is one of the most important markets in the world, when President Trump left office, Nvidia's market share in China is now 0%. I hope we're able to revert back to the policies of the Trump 45 administration and get back into the market and compete.
What do you make of this, Gordon? Look, I mean, China's chip manufacturers are reportedly working to upgrade production equipment to bypass the global export controls. But we know that the president said, we think it would be okay for Nvidia to send those chips to China. What are your thoughts here?
Jensen Huang will say anything to sell chips to China. The important point here is that China was always going to get to the point where it would not buy American chips. This is the Made in China 2025 plan, and this has been a number of plans that China has publicly announced. So Jensen Huang is wrong to blame the Trump administration for the drop in Nvidia's sales in China. This was always going to happen. We do not want Nvidia or any other company providing chips to China over a period where China knows that its local chips are not as good as America's, and that they need something to bridge the gap until they can come up with something better. Now, More Threads just announced 2 new chips, which are almost as good as Nvidia's. This happened just a couple days ago. More Threads is the Chinese chip company that went public this month. But, you know, China knows that it is behind, and we should not be helping China compete against us. It's simple as that. Jensen Huang has all sorts of interests but the United States interests are very different from his.
I'm wondering if President Trump is playing a game here. I mean, let's not forget that the president is going to be meeting with Xi Jinping in the new year, I believe in April. They're expected to meet. Maybe President Trump is keeping all his options open until that meeting to see how it goes. He's trying to navigate a very aggressive communist China at a time that we are still locked in and reliant on the China supply chain. He's changing that. Doesn't happen overnight, but he's getting corporate America to bring their supply chains to America. And does he walk a balance and walk a little on eggshells going into this meeting before we're actually reliant, we're no longer reliant on China, because we're not there yet?
I'm sure that's what President Trump is doing. And, we can question the tactics, we can question all sorts of things, but, clearly that's the best strategy. The point about the meeting, though, in April, that's not a good idea for the United States from any number of different perspectives. The Chinese are going to use this as a propaganda tool against the United States. They've already been doing that. They think they can push Trump around. And every time Trump tries to be accommodative to the China, they use it to say that the United States is weak. Now, I'm sure President Trump doesn't think he's weak, and he isn't. But that's not important. What's important is what the Chinese think, because that motivates what they do. And they've become much more aggressive under President Trump's watch because of his accommodative efforts. We cannot accommodate communist China, unfortunately. That's just not the way it works with a militant regime.
Yeah, they were rolling over Joe Biden. I mean, give me a break, Joe Biden and his family accepting all that money from communist China, according to the Oversight Committee. They were rolling over Joe Biden. I don't know that they're tougher now because Trump is in charge. I have to push back on that. I mean, President Trump has been the toughest president on China that I've seen in my following all of this. Do you disagree with that?
Well, Trump in the second term is probably as tough as he was in the first term.
Right.
But the point is that China's aggressiveness right now requires a much more robust American response. And so at this point, I think the tactics need to change because, we see China doing all sorts of things that it hasn't done in the past. And that is very worrying.
I don't disagree with that. I spoke with Ram Charan. He is considered the world's best consultant. He's going to be on next Sunday on Sunday Morning Futures. You know what he said to me? He said one idea is to get FDI, that's foreign direct investment, into China down to zero. He doesn't want to see any foreign direct investment from the U.S. into China. He wants it down to zero. Wait till you see this interview next week. China is now increasing its war threats after the U.S. and Taiwan's groundbreaking $11 billion arms deal, Gordon. Beijing says the deal will not support the, quote, doomed fate of Taiwan's independence, and it will backfire. Do you anticipate China will push its military even harder against Taiwan next year? I mean, the word is in Washington that the expectation is that China goes into Taiwan some way in 2027. That would be the Davidson window. Admiral Davidson came up with that date, 2027. But what's your take in terms of next year?
Next year, I think China pushes very hard against Japan and very hard against the Philippines. I don't think it can push much harder against Taiwan for a lot of reasons. War against Taiwan would be extremely unpopular with the Chinese people, who, by the way, don't want war. But Xi Jinping believes that increasing tensions is in his personal interest, I think. And that means we're going to see even more provocative Chinese actions against weaker countries in the region. And by the way, President Trump's announcement of this $11 billion arms package to Taiwan is really, really good because that reestablishes deterrence, which we obviously need to do right now, considering China's increased rhetoric, plus its moves across the region, from India in the south to South Korea in the north.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of important points you make there. Gordon, great to see you this morning. Thank you, sir. Have a wonderful holiday week. Thank you, Gordon Chang.